right, let's head up to the top and see what kind of damage we're dealing with on this RV roof today. You can see it is a vinyl roof, or maybe it's referred to as a PVC roof. But this whole corner, this is the back driver's side, this whole corner has been damaged. I think it was by a tree branch. It just kind of peeled the corner up. So we've got a bunch of vinyl missing on the corner. It's within, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet from the rear of the vehicle. The rest of this roof is fine. It's just this little strip right here that's damaged. The RV dealer wanted to replace this entire roof. And I won't argue that's probably the best way to do this, but it's also really expensive. I think they wanted about $10,000 to do this project. That's really expensive, and I don't think it's necessary for just this corner, which I think we can repair just fine. So in looking at this, there's this trim piece along the edge, and you can see that the vinyl rolls down underneath this trim piece. So one of the first things I'm going to need to do is get that trim piece removed so I get the vinyl out that is underneath this. So I was looking at this trim piece, and at first I was wondering how it attached on, but it didn't take long to figure out that there is a little rubber strip hiding all of the screws. So you can see underneath there, that just peels right out really easily by hand, and then there's just some Phillips head screws that need to be removed in order to get this piece out. Now there's a seam right there, and that's pretty convenient for what I'm doing because that is just in front of the area that I need to repair. So it looks like I can maybe take this entire piece off from the rear up to that little seam. So I'm going to start doing that, and then I'll start cutting back the vinyl so we can start doing our actual repair. All right, with that piece out of the way, we can now start to get all of this vinyl removed that was wrapped over the edge and hiding underneath that trim piece. So you can see this vinyl, it just kind of peels off. And then underneath that, it looks like there's some old eternabond tape. You can tell eternabond tape because it's really gooey and sticky. It makes kind of a mess. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just work on getting all of this kind of cleaned off so that it's ready for the repair here. Now, in order to do this, I need a nice straight line, and I want to cut it as close as I can to the edge, but it's already peeled back a little ways. So I need to use that as my gauge, but make a nice clean line. So I'm just using a long level here as a straight edge, and I'm just scoring that vinyl so that I can get a nice clean edge all the way down there. So with that, I can now pull this off and I get a nice clean tear. When I got down to the corner, I just tried to cut it off nice and flush with where the end meets the caulking down in the corner. And you can see I still have some eternabond tape left that I need to remove. Now, on the front, again, I want to get far enough that I can get to the damaged part, or a little ways past the damaged part. And I'm trying to line this up basically with that trim piece that I took off on the side. So I went, I don't know, like a foot past the damage, and I'm just scoring it along there so that I can pull this off and have a nice square right there. So next I'm going to have to remove all of this eternabond tape. I'll get all of that off, and then we can start working on the next step. All right, next step here is to peel this existing roof back. Okay, so this is along where I've already cut, and I want to peel it up about, I'm going about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches, but probably closer to 1.5 inches. And so I had to score it at the end where the caulking is, and then I also in the front had to score it a little. And the reason is I have this 6-inch wide eternabond tape.
That's impossible.
6 inches.
And I'm placing it underneath, right? So from a flashing perspective, I want any water that might be on the vinyl roof to roll off on top of this eternabond tape. because it's a little bit downhill from the vinyl. So that's effectively what I'm doing here, is just getting my eternabond tape laid out so that it will be able to slide underneath that that existing vinyl. And now I can start taking the backing off of that tape and sliding it in there. Now I went with 6-inch wide for this particular use because it was just wide enough to reach underneath the existing vinyl like I wanted, and also wrap over the corner enough that it will hide nicely underneath that trim piece that I took off. So this stuff is really sticky. It's not the easiest to work with. I learned a little bit going through the process of doing this, but effectively I'm just trying to be as careful as I can, pulling off, I don't know, about 12 to 18 inches at a time of the backing, and then just sticking it down to the roof. Now I didn't try to get all of the old eternabond adhesive off. I don't think it really matters in this case. This stuff is so incredibly sticky. So I pushed that down, and I went a little ways past, you can see here, a little ways past the end. I didn't want to stop right on there. I wanted it to overlap a little bit. And so I pulled that eternabond tape just past where I had made the front cut. So you can see it overlaps a couple inches and tucks down nicely there. So with my 6-inch piece in place, I now, you can see I have that laid down all nice. I now need to put this flap down and have it stick so that it stays on top, right? Kind of like shingles. But in order to do that, I'm going to use a smaller piece of eternabond tape. You can see it does wrap nicely over the edge, so that should seal that corner pretty well. So I think that's going to work out just right. And I'm going to take this 4-inch wide, and the 4-inch wide I'm going to place right over the seam about like that, and stick all of this down so that vinyl is laid down nice and flat over the top of my 6-inch. So here I am installing the 4-inch and placing that flap down as I go. It was a little windy the day I did this, so it was a little bit of work. I did figure out, and this is a much better way to install this stuff. I figured out that if I carefully press the eternabond tape down, kind of doubling it back on itself, hopefully you can see here, I'm gonna go forward about, I don't know, 18 inches or so, 16 to 18 inches, and press it down, make sure it's flat and where I want it, and then I'm gonna peel the backing out. And I should have done this same process with the 6-inch, but I hadn't figured that out yet. But you can see now I'm pulling the backing out. If you do that, you can get the eternabond tape exactly where you want it. If you peel off the backing first, you better be 100% when you stick it down, because again, this stuff is just really, really incredibly sticky.
Sticky.
So just laying that flap down and putting the 4-inch to hold it down nice and tight against the 6-inch piece that it's on top of. And yeah, just press that down all the way to the end. All right, finishing this off. I hadn't cut it to length yet. I was just going to figure that out when I got to the end. And this actually worked out pretty well. What I decided to do with this 4-inch piece was make it go a little bit past the 6-inch piece, because I wanted this to seal everything in that corner really nice. So I went a little bit farther, and then I just carefully used a razor knife to cut, or a utility knife, I guess, to cut that off. And that stuff cuts pretty well with a utility knife. It does leave a little adhesive on the blade, but it works okay. So got that laid out, and then all I had to do was finish peeling off that backing, and then just pressed this down nice and flat. Again, the goal here is to kind of seal everything in that corner where I made those cuts. And this stuff seals really well. It's really waterproof, and the adhesive is just ridiculous. So just press that down all really nice and tight to get it nice and flat. All right, we now have all of our eternabond tape installed. I've got the 6-inch underneath the vinyl, which is what I want. It wraps around the edge, so water should run off. And then I have the 4-inch piece basically just holding the vinyl and keeping it on top of the 6-inch piece. So the 4 inches there just to hold everything down. Water should run off exactly like I want, off of the vinyl onto the 6-inch and off the side. So I've got a bit of caulking to do, but before we get to the caulking, we need to go ahead and install the trim piece that we took off originally. So trim piece was pretty easy to do. Basically just make sure it's lined up where it was, and you should be able to put the screws back in the existing screw holes that were already there in the beginning. With that piece installed, I just had to snap this rubber piece back into place. What I figured out is that it actually snaps back in pretty easily. You just kind of have to pinch it together, and then you can see the bottom and top pop into place underneath on the little channels there on the trim, and you can slide it back and forth as needed. This is the caulking I'm using. This is Dicor. This is specifically for an RV. I picked gray because a lot of the area I was working on was painted silver. I was kind of hoping they matched. I don't know that they really matched that much, and I'll probably still have to paint this. But regardless, this is my first time using Dicor, and it works about like most caulkings. Do note, this is not the self-leveling kind. This is the non-self-leveling kind. So this works a little bit more like what I would consider traditional caulking. Do note, it doesn't like to stop running when you release the trigger or take the pressure off of the tube. So it's constantly running even afterward. So just keep that in mind. I decided to just put on a pair of rubber gloves so that I could use my finger to kind of press the caulking in where I thought it needed to be. And I was pretty liberal with the caulking overall. I just wanted to make sure all of those seams were well caulked and that there was no problems with any of them. So once I got it caulked over here in the corner, I focused on the trim piece down on the front and started from the back and just started caulking along that entire seam. So I just have to get that all done. Like I mentioned, this stuff comes out. Keep a rag handy. This stuff does not like to stop flowing when you let off the trigger. All right, with everything caulked, this repair is done. The only thing I think cosmetically I will want to do is maybe get some silver paint and just hit up this corner so I can make it look, at least from the ground, a little more like it did out of the factory. So I'll just roll a little paint along that corner there. But other than that, I think this thing's good. We obviously saved a ton of money and time and effort by doing this ourselves. I'll put links to everything in the description. As always, throw your comments down below. Let me know good, bad, or indifferent. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.